expenditures would in fact prevent the kinds of things that you're suggesting?
They'd also be spending a lot of time down at City Hall, since a lot of the problem seems to be emanating from there.
Well, you know me. I'm going to make sure that those individuals are going to be out in the neighborhoods and in the communities and not stuck in City Hall.
Joanna Reese, we've had a couple of these mayoral debates, and there's usually been somebody in the audience at the end that comes up and says to me, "Why didn't we ask this question?" So I'm going to. This is a question that popped up.
I'm intensely curious as to
yes, it's a very simple one. People in the city now are feeling less and less safe. They go out. What can you do about it?
Well, first of all, it starts with how we budget. Because when we have budget deficits, we cut every department equally. We do top-down deficit management. We have to do bottom-up budgeting, where we go department by department and we figure out what are the investments in the critical services that we absolutely need to ensure safety and security in the community. That's making sure that we don't cut back in our investment in things like police and fire, number one. I also think it's critically important that our policemen live in the city, because such a small amount do. And while we can't impact the ones now that have already moved out, but as we have new recruits of classes, I would love to set up structures with local financial institutions to provide low-cost loans for the new recruits as they're getting out of the academy, so they have the ability to buy homes. And then by the time they pay off those mortgages, they're retired, they're still living in our community, they're walking our streets and help ensuring our security.
Okay. And what would your evaluation of the safety of San Francisco streets be right now, in your opinion?
I think in some areas it feels safe and secure, and I think in other areas of the city it does not. So I just think, and I think that's another problem that we have in our community, that we have to make sure that we are supporting all of our residents, that we're making sure that all of our neighborhoods are supported and safe, and I don't think that's the case right now. I spend a lot of time at muni stops and going door to door. I've met with thousands and thousands of residents, and I do hear differences depending on what neighborhood you're in.
Do you support Dennis Herrera's gang injunctions, or they call for do you?
I'm supportive of preventive care. I think that as a mother of a 22-year-old and an 18-year-old, a brain is not fully developed until the age of 24. And I think what we need to do when kids make bad decisions and unfortunately are in tough situations, rather than being punitive and putting them to detention, I think we have to look for preventative solutions. That's why I'm a big supporter of community schools. We're providing additional resources for kids, whether that's social work or after-school programs, to give them the support that they need to be successful in life and not to be punitive.
Okay. San Francisco, former supervisor Tony Hall.
Come on out with it, Phil.
Oh, come on. It's just such an easy one for you. I just don't know what to do. Okay. Where do you stand on the two pension reform measures going before November?
That was rigged.
I am not supporting either one. Let me try to tell you why, Phil. We have a $7 billion debt when it comes to pension reform that has to be paid off. A $7 billion debt, and it's growing by $500 million every year. $500 million every year. Ed Lee's City Family Consensus Plan was really kicking the can down the road, like my commercial says, because it's going to add $4.5 billion onto that growing debt in the next 6 years. Jeff Adachi's plan is a little bit better, cuts that debt growth a little bit more, but it's only going to save about $4 billion. Let me draw a parallel, if I can. There's a big brick wall out there. It's called bankruptcy. Several other cities in the state of California have already gone into bankruptcy. This car is traveling 100 miles an hour towards that wall. Ed Lee's plan slows the impact down to 95 miles an hour. Jeff Adachi's plan slows it down to 90 miles an hour. Tony Hall's plan, what I will do as mayor is change the pension benefits and health benefits paid to our employees to be in line with the private sector. Things like 401ks, reinstitute pay for performance, like the old civil service system called for.
So you would should go from a fixed rate pension return to a 401k plan for public employees?
That would be one of the alternatives. I would also increase the benefits paid, the contributions paid by unvested employees, and the cops and the firemen union never got this straight. My plan would protect those vested in the system. It would require new contributions on the part of new hirees and people brought into the system for their higher contributions for their health care and their pensions. And it could be paid off over a period of time because we have to bite the bullet because of the past promises made by mayors who promised
But
more than they
aren't
can
you
deliver.
passing the bullet down to the new hires to bite?
Oh,
If you're-
absolutely. There's no other way to do this.
So the ones that have it now are,
You cannot break your promises, and Tony Hall, as mayor, will not break his promises.
work that into a good commercial. Okay, Supervisor John Avalos. Real quick, people have asked about this one repeatedly. They say that City Hall, in the past couple of years, has been dysfunctional, and it now appears to at least be getting on some sort of track as mayor. What would you do to keep on that, or is that a healthy course?
Well, I think there's been a lot of discussion about civility and how important it is. I think it's important, but I think vision is also important for San Francisco. And I also wonder about civility. If we're just being civil to each other within City Hall and we're not being civil with the residents of this city, are we really doing the work that we really need to be doing? I have concerns about how City Hall has been operating lately. I believe that it's forgetting the small businesses and residents, especially residents on the southern part of San Francisco and the southeast sector of San Francisco, my district especially. We have a foreclosure crisis that's happening in this city, and civility is not doing much to deal with that. In fact, the civility of City Hall is not really even aware that we have a crisis like that in San Francisco. So for me to have a functional government, it has working together and cordially working together, but also understanding what's outside of San Francisco that we need to be civil at to respond to.
Okay, 'cause there's a line, the question is sort of the line between debate, differences in policy, and things getting personal. So, in your opinion on things getting personal down there?
Actually, I don't believe it's necessary to get personal in politics, and I've actually been able to practice a politics that has not been that, and I can fit easily with the tension of debate, with the tension of policy decisions that we have to make and disagreement. That's part of the political process. That's part of democracy. San Francisco has an amazing tradition of civic participation that I think is it's healthy in this city, and I want to see it continuing grow. Sometimes we have disagreements, but when they become personal, that's when I think that we fail to do what's best for the public good.
Thank you. Although I must say it is entertaining. And speaking of the personal and the political, now we're going to have them all mixed up because I'm going to draw names out of here, and each candidate will be allowed to ask any other candidate that they're choosing a question. Any question, any candidate, okay? First up, Public Defender Jeff Adachi.
I have a question for Mayor Lee. You and I are the only candidates that have elected not to take public financing. And as you know, under the system, I think all the other candidates have applied for up to $900,000 in public financing. And I've read your comments. I think we're similar on the points that we both said because of the city's fiscal crisis, we can't see taking $900,000 for our campaigns at this time. The question I have for you, though, is that I have agreed to stay within the spending cap to make sure that we have a level playing field. Will you today agree to stay within that spending cap?
Thank you, Jeff. Well, I don't have a billionaire funding my campaign, so I'm not so sure I can do that.
Neither
Jeff,
do I.
you know, I do agree that when I came into this late, I was going to raise as much money as I could from residents of this city and private individuals and keep to all of the campaign contribution limits that the campaign requires us to do. And we'll run a clean campaign. I did limit myself and refuse to take public financing because I made those tough decisions with members of the Board of Supervisors to cut a lot of valuable programs in this city. And, you know, my heart is really with a lot of programs that we would have funded better if we had a more robust economy and the state didn't hit us hard. We would have a lot more programs that I would feel very proud about. We made those tough decisions. We worked with all of the communities to find out the core city services that we had to keep. And we did it in cooperation with many, many neighborhoods and with members of the Board of Supervisors and the community-based agencies that provide that service. We did a very, very collaborative effort, well worth this name here of Alliance for Jobs. We found those alliances and did it in a positive way.
So the short answer is no?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Bevan Dufty.
Michaela, you authored the biotech tax credit, and when that program started, we had 2 biotech businesses in San Francisco, which has grown to 72, and I was proud to work with you and Mayor Newsom. Can you talk about how you feel that that has connected to education in San Francisco, and what impacts do you see, and how do you see that in terms of other sectors we want to grow?
Thank you, Supervisor Dufty. I appreciate that question. As a member of the Board of Supervisors, it was not a setup. As a member of the Board of Supervisors, the very first thing I did on the board was to create San Francisco's very first economic plan. And what the economic plan did is it looked at potential growth, job growth opportunities for San Francisco. We went on, Bevan was, I believe, one of the co-sponsors of the biotech payroll tax exemption. He was absolutely right. When we started, we had 1 or 2 biotech companies in San Francisco, and today we have 74. For every 1 PhD position in a biotech company, we created 6 to 7 entry-level jobs. And in addition to that, we created hundreds, quite literally hundreds of building trade jobs because the buildings themselves are massive. When we did it also in conjunction with the school district. So we had biotech classes in our high schools. Galileo has one of the best. And City College put together a biotech program as well. And so as our children were going to high school, they were learning to pick biotech as a source of interest. They were studying it. They were going on, taking those classes at City College, and then they were taking the jobs that we were actually creating here as a city.
Okay.
It was a wonderful model and one that we should be duplicating. Thank you for the question.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
Okay, Mayor Ed Lee.
Thank you. This will be a question to former Supervisor Bevan Dufty. Supervisor Dufty, we've worked together a lot in City Hall. I know you learned a lot and delivered a lot of services to the neighborhood service program that you were heading up. We worked together to make sure Halloween was safe and that it improves year after year to make sure that event is very positive for the area. We walked the transgender march together to make sure that people who were marginalized didn't continue feeling that way. You know, you've created a very civil tone in these mayoral debates that I've watched, and I really appreciated that. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about things that have yet to be covered in these mayoral debates that you think are important to the city of San Francisco.
Thank you, Mayor. Rather than talking about the future, I want to tell you for a minute about my past.
Wait a minute, let's go with the question.
He's asking me.
Okay.
He's asking me.
Right.
I'll get to it, Phil. I can handle a question.
Okay,
You
but when
wanna
the
roll my
time's out,
time
the
back?
time's out.
Roll my time back.
Okay, it's rolled.
So when I grew up, my mom worked in the civil rights movement, and she went to work in 1964 for the National Council of Negro Women. And at that time, to register to vote in New York, you had to pass a literacy test if you were black. And she worked in a storefront on 116th Street. And when I was 9 years old, that was my daycare. And I went every day and saw people from 21 to 91 learning to read at a 9th grade level. I was transformed by that experience. And it made me think how amazing it would be to be the person that these individuals voted for and believed that they could bring change. And I've been in this process my entire life, and I believe democracy is about choice. And I have faith that I can be a good candidate, and I can demonstrate what I want to do without tearing down anybody else. And that's why I like ranked choice voting, because you should be cautious for the bricks you throw, because they may bounce right back on you. Does that answer the question?
I don't know, does that answer your question?
Certainly. Thank you. Yes.
So just to clarify, what issues are we should be talking about that we haven't?
I think we should be talking about a black agenda, all 11 of us, and that's what I think is missing in this city, is to have an agenda on a day-to-day basis, how we're going to do that. And many of us have those experiences. Obviously, Mayor Lee, working in the civil rights movement. Obviously, Jeff Adachi, who has run a tremendous public safety agency and pulled people out of the justice system. But I believe that we have to talk about changing, not just talking in platitudes, but I can talk about what I started at Mission High School. I can talk about the work that I do with the Hunters Point Family Foundation, which is pulling young adults out of crime in public housing. And I think we need to talk about the decimation of black business, which is unprecedented in the history of San Francisco. We have lost more black businesses in the past 10 years than we've ever lost in the history of this city. And it's not just about public sector contracting, it's also about getting the private sector to do a better job, because black businesses hire people from the community and make a difference, and we need a plan.
Good, that's the answer. Joanna Reese.
I'm going to ask David Chu. So Mayor Newsom had initiated discussions with Twitter a long time ago, and you, along with the sponsorship of Jane Kim, helped steward that legislation, the mid-market tax break, through the Board of Supervisors. While I view it as a Band-Aid solution where we need wholesale reform, how did you calculate what the positive economic impact would be to the city with the mid-market tax break? And do you believe that we need to take steps to have wholesale reform across the growth economy?
The quick answer to your final question is absolutely yes. And let me start by saying that for over 8 years, before I ran for the Board of Supervisors, I was the founder and chief operating officer of a technology company. And we have known in recent years that many of our tech companies are leaving our city. And so when in November of last year, the CFO of Twitter told me that he was likely to leave San Francisco, we worked with the Newsom administration, and I actually called my newly elected colleague, Jane Kim, on her way to the airport as she was heading down after her election, to tell her that we needed to fix this Twitter issue. Now, the solution was not a tax break for Twitter. The solution was a tax incentive for new businesses that are creating new jobs in the Tenderloin mid-market region, which has been blighted for decades. And I think we know that if Twitter had left, that would have meant a $500,000 hit to our general coffers. With Twitter staying here, that's going to mean literally millions of dollars a year of new revenues because of the halo effect of keeping this 21st century company here. And this is why I was proud to both champion that legislation as well as legislation to make sure that companies like Zynga, like Yelp, like other startups are not the only companies in the entire country that have their stock options taxed.
What about, that's the new companies, what about the ones that have been here? What kind of breaks or help are you going to give the ones that have been paying for the streets and stuff for the last 20 or 30 years?
Ever since I served on our city's Small Business Commission, and I want to thank those of you who represent the small business community here in this room, I have called for comprehensive business tax reform. We need to make sure that our 80,000 small businesses that are the lifeblood of this city, that are employing our local residences, that they also have an opportunity to thrive. And I don't think that a payroll tax that penalizes the creation of jobs, that penalizes the cost of labor, is the right way for us to go. And this is why in this recent budget process, I supported some money so that we could hire some economists and consultants to give us a roadmap in where we need to go in the coming future.
State Senator Leland Yee.
My question is to Mr. Herrera. Mr. Herrera, recently I think I read somewhere that you thought that Mohammed Nuru, who's the new Director of Public Works, was a bad choice. Maybe you can help me and other individuals to understand exactly why you took that position.
Thank you, Senator Yee. There was a little controversy around City Hall about that today. But listen, you can have differences of opinion. Mayor Lee Amy Brown made a selection of Mohammed Nuru to be the new interim head of DPW. It is not a pick that I happen to agree with for a variety of reasons. First, the controller has issued a blistering report several years ago with respect to mishandling of public funds that happened under Mr. Nuru's watch. Secondly, I did a report in 2004 that indicated that Mr. Nuru had pressured city contractors to engage in political activity on city time using taxpayer dollars. That's not something I think should be countenanced. I think we should hold the heads of our city departments, especially those that are as vital as DPW, 1,200 people, $129 million budget, to the highest ethical standard. And unfortunately, Mr. Nuru's behavior over the course of the last 15 years, to me, demonstrates that he is not someone who should be put in that position of authority. I say that fully respecting the hard work that he has put in at DPW in other positions in terms of street cleaning, but I just think that there are better selections which would solidify the public's trust in the integrity of government than having Mr. Nuru be the head of DPW.
Well, Dennis Herrera, your turn.
My question is for Senator Yee.
Got a little infield action going here.
No, Senator, the last several debates you've talked quite extensively about a proposal that you have to redo the Ethics Commission, and you talked about your belief that power brokers are in charge of City Hall. And I kind of wanted to explore, number one, what you mean by that, and number two, are you advocating that we go back to the way it used to be, where the city attorney and district attorney had control of all ethical investigations? Because I don't know if I want that responsibility back in my bailiwick. But, or do you have another proposal? I'd like to hear what it is.
Let me just say that in recent months, I have seen my city being torn apart by power brokers. These are not lobbyists and so on. These are unregulated, unregistered individuals who are extremely influential in the city. They created an independent expenditure committee that the Ethics Commission said that you can, in fact, coordinate with a campaign control committee. That happened in the state of California, happened in Sacramento. The FPPC that regulates politicians would come down on all of us with a ton of brick, so fast that we didn't know what hit us. But somehow in San Francisco, you have these unregistered, unregulated individuals that are just simply stealing our elections, just simply trashing our ethics, our basic core as to how we run our election. And so what I am proposing is in fact a 21-point plan that is going to take politicians out of the control of the Ethics Commission. The grand jury, San Francisco grand jury, has already said that it is a sleepless watchdog. I've indicated that it is a toothless tiger. And what we need to do is to give it more power, independent power, transparent oversight in all of the regulations and all the governance of politicians and those individuals associated with that. And so having investigators that will investigate proactively rather than reactively, having the resources to kind of look into some of these issues that have been identified, those are the things that we've got to do. We've got to bring all of those power brokers under control. If not, they will continue to destroy the basis of our democracy here in San Francisco.
So who are the power brokers?
I think that as we have seen in the papers, and I think, Phil, you have reported that there are individuals who are out there that are, again, as I said, they are not registered, they are not regulated. These are individuals that have access to City Hall, and they don't report. You know, when lobbyists lobby, they not only have to register that they are influencing or trying to influence politicians, they also have to kind of report as to specifically activities related to that. They have to also talk about what kinds of campaigns they are engaged in. Power brokers don't have to do that. And so what the proposal that I have is to, again, regulate those individuals, provide some teeth to the Ethics Commission so that the Ethics Commission will no longer be appointments of politicians. They ought to be appointments of regular individuals, and then the Ethics Commission needs to be empowered by investigators and other resources so that they can, in fact, independently enforce rules and regulations related to these political activities.
David Chu, question?
I have a question for Ed Lee. So Ed, about a week or two before you told the world that you were considering running for mayor, you told me that you had looked at yourself in the mirror, you didn't have the fire in the belly, you didn't want to run, but that you were having trouble saying no to Willie Brown and Rose Pack. Could you tell me what's happened, what's changed in your mind over the last couple of weeks?
Thank you, Supervisor, for that question. It's a big surprise you would ask that. I did change my mind, and I've talked to you about it on several occasions. And I changed my mind because my working with you, Supervisor Chu, and with all the rest of the supervisors, had given me some great hope that this city can succeed in the things that it wants to do. If we continue the high level of civility that we've accomplished and we set the tone since January, if we continue on the course of solving problems in a better civil engagement that we've conducted ourselves in, if we do the kinds of things that the public has asked us to do, not engage in misdirected public rancor, not call each other names, but to honestly work on those things of bridging the budget gap, of doing it in a way in which neighborhoods so respectful and community-based agencies and members of the Board of Supervisors that for the very first time you introduced a balanced budget to a standing ovation of people that come to room 200, that's a newfound respect for the way we do government. I want to keep that up. That is what changed my mind. And people like Senator Feinstein and others who call and talk to me about standing up to do this, about making sure that I don't let it go, about keeping that philosophy of good government ahead of us and keeping to get things done. That's what I've been about. That's what changed my mind. And I will do my best to continue that dialogue, that level of public service, because this city needs and wants to succeed in everything it does. And I'm so glad that we're here at the Alliance for Jobs, because that's what you want to have out of your city government.
Assessor Recorder Phil Ting. Question.
Mr. Mayor, while we're still doing better in terms of employment, job creation is still a major issue, obviously, because we're here tonight. Can you tell us about your plan for high-wage jobs here in San Francisco in the coming years?
Thank you, Phil. Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Phil, because you, as Assessor Recorder, have worked outside of the box. Not only have you done a good job in collecting our revenue, but I welcomed in and I embraced this whole Gold Solar program that you've done. It's a wonderful program because it created new types of jobs, the kind of jobs that Mission Bay, after the leadership of Mayor Brown and certainly Mayor Gavin Newsom, when they helped create the foundation for these new tech jobs and life sciences jobs, we have embraced that, and that's our new economy. And so working along the same themes, a mayor has to make sure that these deals are done. And with the new tech companies, I've been working with Supervisor Mark Farrell, Supervisor David Chu, of course, Supervisor Mercarimi and others have come in and said we need to dialogue with our tech company. We need to form a technology advisory committee, which we did months ago, right after the Twitter settlement was made, because they wanted in on the way the city functions so that they can help change it to make it more business-friendly and job-friendly. And one of the first things that we've agreed to do, again, with Supervisor Chu's concurrence and the board, is to look at the way our payroll tax system works, because it's right now job punishing, when we should be at the opposite of job creation and job sustaining. So that will be a basis upon the new technology, but it's also listening to the technology companies' advice, because they're forming some brand-new products that we need to advertise.
We're over the
And-
time.
Okay, but I'm excited about this.
Obviously.
Thank you.
He handed you the ball, you ran with it. Tony Hall.
Thank you, Phil. You know, Phil, I've got too much respect for this audience out here tonight to be being part of a mutual admiration society or pitching softball or gotcha questions. That's not my style. You know, folks, I've been in this business over 35 years as an executive in 9 different city departments. Everybody knows where I stand as a conservative, moderate, whatever you want to call me, liberal, I don't care, where I stand on creating jobs, business, and home ownership. But I'd like to direct this question, if I can, to the audience.